Have you ever heard of a city that was overtaken, not by war, not by famine, but by dance? Not joyous, celebratory dance, but a haunting, uncontrollable frenzy that drove people into the streets, their bodies moving against their will, as if commanded by some dark force. This is not legend. This is not myth. They danced until their feet bled, until exhaustion brought them crashing to the ground, and still, they could not stop. Today, we're going to uncover one of the most chilling and mysterious events in history. In July 1518, Strasbourg, a city within the Holy Roman Empire, experienced a phenomenon that would bewilder historians for centuries. A woman known as Frau Trophäa stepped into the streets and began to dance. At first, her movements appeared unusual but harmless. She twirled and stepped in an erratic rhythm, seemingly possessed by an irresistible force. She danced without pause for hours. Passers-by initially observed her with curiosity and soon with concern, but none could persuade her to stop. Within days, others joined Frau Trophäa. Records indicate that by the end of the first week, over 30 people were dancing in the streets. The participants were men and women of various ages from different social classes. They exhibited unusual physical stamina, seemingly unaffected by fatigue. Witnesses described their faces as flushed, sweat covering their bodies and their movements relentless. Strasbourg in the early 16th century was a city under strain. Crop failures had left many families hungry, while outbreaks of disease added further stress to the urban population. Chroniclers of the time remarked that the citizens were living under extreme anxiety, which may have contributed to the spread of the dancing phenomenon. The psychological state of the population, coupled with superstition and religious belief, created fertile ground for what would become a mass episode of uncontrollable movement. City officials were initially uncertain how to respond. Early attempts to intervene included persuading musicians to accompany the dancers, hoping that structured music might help guide or control the activity. Clergy were consulted, as the events were often interpreted through a religious lens. Some authorities believed the dance was a curse or a sign of divine punishment, particularly because it coincided with a period of social hardship and famine. Despite these early interventions, the number of dancers continued to grow. By the second week, the streets were crowded with individuals moving in continuous motion, their bodies straining with effort. Many collapsed from exhaustion or injuries sustained during the prolonged activity. Contemporary documents describe authorities becoming increasingly alarmed as the phenomenon escalated beyond their control. They attempted to relocate the dancers to halls or spaces designated for the activity, hoping containment would prevent further spread, but these measures had limited success. The early days of the dance established a pattern: spontaneous participation, relentless movement, and public concern. The city chroniclers began meticulous records, noting the number of participants, the time and duration of each dancing episode, and any adverse effects. These early records serve as the foundation for historical study, offering a detailed account of the initial phase of what became known as the Dance of St. Vitus. By the second and third weeks of July 1518, the dance had spread through Strasbourg with alarming speed. Reports indicate that participation had grown to nearly 100 people. Men and women from different guilds, trades, and social standings joined in, seemingly unable to resist the pull of the movement. People watched in disbelief as entire streets were filled with dancers, moving in unison, yet without coordination. Chroniclers of the period described the scene in vivid detail. Participants appeared simultaneously entranced and exhausted, some stumbling, others collapsing, but somehow continuing to rise and resume dancing. Their faces bore the flush of intense exertion, and their clothing was soaked with sweat. Eyewitness accounts frequently mentioned that some dancers cried out, not in joy, but as if in pain, yet could not cease their motion. The city authorities struggled to contain the outbreak. Initial measures included allowing musicians to play in designated areas under the belief that organized music might guide the dancers safely. Some municipal records suggest that temporary halls were set up to house the dancers, hoping to channel their movements in a controlled environment. Despite these interventions, the phenomenon continued to spread. Participation swelled as more citizens, perhaps influenced by observation and communal pressure, joined the ranks. Reports indicate that by late July, the number of dancers may have reached 400 people. Medical practitioners documented cases of exhaustion, fainting, and, in some instances, death. Chroniclers recorded that some participants succumbed to heart attacks or strokes, while others died from sheer fatigue and dehydration. These records, though sparse, underscore the severity of the event and the inability of the city to manage the crisis effectively. This phase of the dance reveals a complex interplay between psychological, social, and environmental factors. The combination of extreme social stress, famine, disease, and deeply ingrained religious beliefs created a fertile ground for what modern historians describe as a mass psychogenic illness. The phenomenon was not localized to a single group. It swept across the city, affecting individuals indiscriminately. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city under immense strain. The population faced widespread famine due to crop failures, harsh winters, and poor harvests in preceding years. Many families struggled to secure enough food, and malnutrition was common, especially among the lower classes. Simultaneously, outbreaks of diseases, including dysentery and smallpox, plagued the city. Medical knowledge at the time was limited, and the remedies available were largely ineffective or harmful. The social and economic pressures created an environment of heightened stress. Guilds and trade organizations operated within strict hierarchies, and laborers often faced long hours with minimal pay. Religious and superstitious beliefs permeated daily life. People commonly attributed misfortune, disease, and unexplained events to divine wrath or the influence of saints. Saint Vitus, in particular, was regarded as a protector against neurological disorders, and dancing in his honor was believed to cure ailments or appease spiritual forces. Contemporary chroniclers noted that Strasbourg's population was particularly susceptible to collective hysteria due to these conditions. Poverty, hunger, and fear of disease heightened emotional instability, making the public more receptive to mass psychological phenomena. The city's confined streets and densely packed neighborhoods also facilitated the rapid spread of behaviors like the dancing mania. Observing others in a frenzied state may have prompted individuals to join involuntarily, driven by subconscious imitation or social pressure. Additionally, political tensions in the region contributed to the overall stress. Strasbourg was a free imperial city within the Holy Roman Empire, navigating complex allegiances and authority structures. Conflicts with neighboring territories and the pressures of local governance compounded the population's anxiety. In such an environment, a seemingly inexplicable event like the dancing mania could escalate quickly, capturing the attention and concern of the entire city. The social context is essential for understanding the phenomenon. It was not merely an isolated oddity, but a product of extreme environmental, economic, and psychological pressures. The combination of hunger, disease, superstition, and communal observation created fertile ground for one of history's most bizarre and documented episodes of mass movement. As the dancing mania continued to expand, Strasbourg's city authorities faced a crisis unlike any they had encountered before. The phenomenon had grown beyond a handful of individuals. Streets were now filled with dozens and later hundreds of people moving in relentless, unending motion. Authorities were under pressure to maintain public order while attempting to safeguard the health of the participants. Initial interventions focused on containment. Municipal officials sought to guide the dancers to halls or public squares where their movements could be monitored. Musicians were employed in an attempt to regulate the rhythm of the dancers and perhaps reduce the chaotic nature of the outbreak. Clergy and religious figures were consulted extensively. Many viewed the event through the lens of divine judgment, interpreting the mania as a curse or punishment sent by God. Consequently, Authorities incorporated religious rites into their strategies, including prayers, processions, and ceremonies intended to appease spiritual forces. Despite these efforts, the dancers often resisted containment. Some broke free from designated areas, returning to the streets where they influenced new participants. Observers documented the persistence of the phenomenon, noting that even those who initially joined reluctantly became fully engrossed in the dance. Authorities found themselves caught between attempts to intervene and the reality of a growing, uncontrollable event. Medical practitioners were consulted to understand the cause and effect of the mania. Treatments included rest, herbal remedies, and ritualized care, but few were effective. Contemporary reports indicate that the physical exhaustion of the dancers often outweighed the benefits of intervention. Some participants suffered collapse, fainting, or severe injuries due to prolonged movement, yet the underlying compulsion persisted. By mid-July, city records describe a growing sense of desperation among officials. The dancing had become a public spectacle, drawing crowds of onlookers while simultaneously endangering the participants. Officials debated more extreme measures, including isolation, confinement, or the use of force, but social and religious norms constrained their actions. The inability to fully control the situation highlighted both the limits of contemporary medical understanding and the challenges of managing mass psychological phenomena in a densely populated urban environment. By late July 1518, the dancing mania had reached its height. The streets of Strasbourg were overflowing with participants, and reports suggest that up to 400 people were involved at the peak of the phenomenon. Men, women, and even children joined the dance, their movements seemingly compelled by forces beyond their control. Some accounts describe individuals continuing for days without rest, their bodies strained to the limits of endurance. Contemporary observers recorded scenes of exhaustion and suffering. Many dancers collapsed from fatigue. Some fell injured on the cobblestones, yet they often rose again to continue moving. Physicians and local healers documented cases of heart failure, strokes, and severe dehydration. In certain instances, participants reportedly died due to the combined effects of overexertion and lack of nutrition. The city, already burdened by famine and disease, was ill-equipped to address the escalating crisis. Eyewitness reports emphasize the chaotic spectacle. Crowds of onlookers gathered, unable to understand the phenomenon yet drawn to it. Some citizens interpreted the event as a divine punishment, while others viewed it as a mysterious affliction, perhaps even contagious in nature. Officials struggled to maintain public order amid the swelling numbers, fearing that panic or unrest might exacerbate the situation. The persistence of the dance was remarkable. Participants exhibited a combination of physical exhaustion and compulsive drive that modern historians interpret as evidence of a mass psychogenic illness. The social dynamics of the city, combined with fear, stress, and collective observation, contributed to the rapid spread and intensity of the mania. Chroniclers noted that the phenomenon seemed to accelerate as more individuals joined, creating a feedback loop that sustained the activity for weeks. Despite intervention efforts, the peak of the outbreak represented the most dangerous phase of the dance. The combination of physical strain, nutritional deficiency, and exposure to the crowded streets amplified the risk of serious injury and death. Contemporary records from hospitals and city archives provide harrowing details of participants, emphasizing both the scale of the phenomenon and the limitations of medical understanding at the time. During the height of the dancing mania, the daily existence of participants became an extraordinary testament to human endurance. Those caught in the phenomenon exhibited a pattern of continuous movement that defied conventional understanding of fatigue and physical limitation. Many dancers reportedly began their day on the streets, moving for hours without food or rest, only to continue into the night. Chroniclers and eyewitnesses recorded the extreme conditions faced by participants. Clothes became soaked with sweat. Shoes were worn through, and blisters covered the feet of those who could not stop moving. Some dancers were aided by friends or family members who attempted to bring sustenance or water. Yet the compulsion to continue dancing often overpowered basic physiological needs. Diaries and municipal records mention instances of individuals who fell unconscious or collapsed, only to rise and resume dancing once recovered. Sleep was severely disrupted. Participants either did not rest at all or took extremely brief intervals of slumber while still partially moving. Nutrition was minimal, as the focus on continuous activity prevented proper meals. Contemporary physicians expressed concern over the combined effects of exhaustion, dehydration, and malnutrition. Some attempted interventions included herbal tonics and light massage, but these were largely ineffective against the overwhelming psychological drive. The social dimension of daily life also changed. Neighbors, shopkeepers, and passers-by were confronted with streets filled with dancing figures. Children watched, often mimicking movements, while adults struggled to navigate public spaces. Communal life became intertwined with the phenomenon, as even those not directly participating were influenced by the pervasive presence of the dance. Participation appeared almost contagious, with psychological pressure and social observation compelling new entrants. For those dancing, the experience combined elements of physical torment and trance-like behavior. Bodies were pushed to extremes, yet individuals maintained a singular focus on the act of movement. Contemporary observers frequently noted the paradoxical combination of suffering and persistence. This daily life of dancers illustrates the extraordinary intersection of physiological stress, psychological compulsion, and social contagion, forming a vivid portrait of the mania's human impact. The mysterious nature of the dancing mania has led historians, physicians, and psychologists to propose various explanations over the centuries. Contemporary accounts often attributed the phenomenon to divine punishment or the influence of Saint Vitus. Many believed that the afflicted were cursed or had angered spiritual forces, and thus dancing was seen as both a symptom and a form of appeasement. Religious interpretations dominated early records, shaping municipal and communal responses. Modern historians and medical researchers have suggested several hypotheses. One widely considered explanation is mass psychogenic illness, sometimes referred to as mass hysteria. This theory posits that under extreme social stress, groups of people may develop physical symptoms without an identifiable organic cause. In Strasbourg, factors such as famine, disease, poverty, and high anxiety levels likely contributed to a collective psychological reaction manifesting as uncontrollable dancing. Another potential factor is ergot poisoning, caused by consuming grains contaminated with the fungus Claviceps purpurea. Ergot contains compounds related to LSD, which can induce hallucinations, muscle spasms, and convulsions. While ergotism may explain some physical manifestations, such as seizures or tingling, scholars note that it cannot fully account for the coordinated social aspect of the dance nor the selective participation of certain groups while others remained unaffected. Social and cultural pressures also played a significant role. Observing neighbors or peers dancing in a frenzied state could have prompted imitation, a phenomenon now recognized as social contagion. Fear, expectation, and communal stress magnified the likelihood that individuals would join the dance involuntarily. Chroniclers often noted that new participants appeared compelled almost immediately upon exposure to the spectacle, suggesting a psychological rather than purely physiological mechanism. Some researchers have proposed a combination of factors: psychological, environmental, and neurological influences interacting in complex ways. The convergence of famine-induced weakness, social stress, religious expectation, and possible fungal toxins created a unique context in which a mass movement disorder could emerge. While no single theory explains every aspect, the combination of historical, medical, and social evidence provides a framework for understanding this extraordinary event in Strasbourg's history. The aftermath of the dancing mania in Strasbourg left a lasting impact on the city and its inhabitants. Contemporary records indicate that dozens of participants had died due to exhaustion, heart failure, or complications related to prolonged physical strain. Many more suffered lasting physical injuries, such as joint damage, muscle weakness, and chronic fatigue. The event highlighted the vulnerability of human bodies under extreme psychological and social pressure. The economic consequences were also significant. Shops and businesses were disrupted as streets filled with dancers, and normal trade activities were interrupted for weeks. Municipal authorities faced increased burdens in attempting to manage both the public health crisis and the resulting social chaos. Local hospitals and caregivers were overwhelmed, struggling to provide treatment and maintain order amid the ongoing phenomenon. Socially, the episode left an enduring mark on collective memory. Chroniclers wrote extensively about the event, preserving detailed accounts that would inform historical and medical studies for centuries. The dancing mania became a cautionary tale about the effects of social stress, religious fervor, and communal influence on human behavior. In later years, physicians and psychologists referenced Strasbourg's experience when exploring mass psychogenic illness and the complex interplay of environmental, social, and psychological factors. The cultural consequences were equally profound. Artists, writers, and storytellers often drew inspiration from the dancing mania, embedding it in narratives that explored human vulnerability, compulsion, and the thin line between ecstasy and suffering. Religious institutions used the event to reinforce moral teachings, warning against sin and encouraging piety. The dancing mania ultimately serves as a reminder of the complex interplay between mind, body, and society. While modern science offers explanations for the phenomenon, the vivid accounts from 1518 continue to captivate researchers and historians, illustrating the extraordinary effects of collective psychological and physical stress. The legacy of the event persists, providing a unique window into human behavior under extreme conditions and offering lessons about resilience, vulnerability, and the influence of social environments on individual and group actions. The dancing mania of 1518 continues to captivate historians, medical professionals, and psychologists centuries later. Its legacy is not merely a historical curiosity, but a case study in the complexities of human behavior under extreme social and psychological pressure. Researchers analyze the event to understand how collective stress, cultural expectations, and physiological factors can converge to produce seemingly inexplicable phenomena. Modern interpretations emphasize the multifaceted nature of the outbreak. Scholars generally agree that the combination of social, environmental, and psychological factors created ideal conditions for a mass psychogenic illness. Food shortages, disease, and extreme anxiety contributed to heightened stress levels, while strong religious beliefs and communal observation amplified the compulsion to dance. The interplay between individual susceptibility and group dynamics explains why certain members of the population became participants while others remained unaffected. The dancing mania has also influenced contemporary thought on the mind-body connection. Cases from Strasbourg demonstrate that psychological phenomena can produce real physical consequences, challenging the boundary between mental and somatic experience. The event has become a reference point for studying mass hysteria, social contagion, and the effects of extreme environmental stressors on communities. Cultural interpretations persist as well. The story of the Strasbourg dancers has inspired literature, theater, and art, reflecting humanity's fascination with the intersection of compulsion, suffering, and collective experience. Writers and historians explore the event as a mirror of societal pressures, illustrating how extraordinary circumstances can drive ordinary people to extraordinary actions. Finally, the dancing mania offers lessons in resilience and vulnerability. It underscores the importance of understanding the psychological and social conditions that can trigger mass behaviors, and reminds modern audiences of the fragility of human equilibrium in the face of extreme stress. While the dancers of 1518 may never be fully understood, their story provides a timeless window into the extraordinary effects of communal influence, cultural belief, and human endurance. Centuries later, scholars still argue, was it a disease, a case of mass hysteria, or something truly mystical? Which version seems closer to the truth for you?